Have you ever been in a quiet house, maybe late in the afternoon or just after dinner, and felt that strange mix of peace and heaviness at the same time? The television is off, the phone hasn't rung, and suddenly the silence feels louder than noise ever did. Many people after 60 know that feeling well. It's not always that you want company. Sometimes you just don't want to feel invisible, forgotten, or left behind by the world. And for a long time, I thought that feeling meant something was wrong with me. I'm 73 now, and for years I told myself that being alone and feeling lonely were the same thing. I assumed that if I didn't have people around me most of the time, then loneliness was just the price I had to pay. But somewhere along the way, something shifted. I didn't suddenly become more social. I didn't fill my calendar with activities or force myself into situations that didn't feel natural. Instead, I learned something much quieter and much more powerful. I learned how to be alone without feeling lonely. That's what this conversation is really about. Because after 60, many of us face changes we didn't ask for. Children grow up and move away. Friends relocate or pass on. Relationships change. Even busy lives can suddenly feel very empty. Loneliness becomes one of those topics people don't like to talk about, even though so many feel it. And yet, learning to be comfortable with your own company can completely change how these years feel. In this video, I want to share what helped me make that shift. Not big theories, not complicated psychology, just simple ways of thinking and living that slowly turned being alone into something peaceful instead of painful. And as we begin, it makes sense to start with the first thing I had to understand, something that took me far too long to learn. The first lesson was realizing that loneliness isn't really about being alone. It's about feeling disconnected. I used to sit by myself and think, if only someone were here. But even when I was with others, I sometimes felt just as lonely. Have you ever been in a room full of people and still felt unseen? That's when it finally clicked for me. Loneliness doesn't disappear just because someone is nearby. It fades when you feel connected, even if that connection is with yourself. That idea felt strange at first. I had spent most of my life focused on caring for others, listening to others, adjusting myself to fit into roles. When those roles faded, I felt like I didn't know who I was without them. Being alone forced me to face that emptiness head-on. And for a while, that was uncomfortable. But slowly, I began to see it as an invitation rather than a punishment. I started by changing how I talked to myself during quiet moments. Instead of thinking, I'm alone again, I began saying, this is my time. That small change didn't fix everything overnight, but it softened the edge of the silence. I paid attention to how I filled that time. Instead of just waiting for it to pass, I chose to be present in it. That leads to the second thing I learned. Being alone feels much less lonely when your days have gentle meaning. Not big goals or busy schedules, but small, personal rituals. I realized that when I woke up without a plan, the day felt long and empty. So I began creating simple rhythms. Morning tea by the window. A short walk at the same time each day. Reading a few pages of a book I actually enjoyed, not one I felt I should read. These small anchors gave shape to my day. They gave me something to return to, something familiar and comforting. And strangely enough, that structure made me feel less dependent on outside company. When your day has its own quiet flow, being alone doesn't feel like waiting. It feels like living. Another important shift was learning to enjoy my own thoughts instead of avoiding them. For a long time, silence scared me because it brought up memories, regrets, and worries I had pushed aside for years. Noise was a distraction. Television, radio, constant activity, they kept me from thinking too deeply. But they also kept me from truly knowing myself. I began allowing small moments of reflection. Not all day, not all at once, just a few minutes here and there. Sitting with a cup of coffee. Watching the light change in the room. Letting my mind wander without judging where it went. Some days it brought sadness. Other days it brought gratitude. Over time, I realized that none of those thoughts were dangerous. They were simply parts of me asking to be acknowledged. As I grew more comfortable with my inner world, the fear of being alone began to loosen its grip. I wasn't avoiding myself anymore. I was getting to know myself again, maybe for the first time in decades. There was also something freeing about letting go of the idea that alone time had to be productive. I didn't need to accomplish anything to justify my day. I didn't need to constantly improve myself. Some days, doing very little was enough. Resting, thinking, simply being. That permission changed everything. When you stop measuring your worth by how busy you are or how useful you seem to others, being alone stops feeling like failure. Another quiet but powerful change came when I stopped comparing my life to others. It's easy to look around and think everyone else is surrounded by family, friends, laughter. But those images rarely show the full picture. Many people feel lonely even in crowded homes. Once I stopped judging my life by someone else's version of happiness, I could begin appreciating my own. I also learned that being comfortable alone doesn't mean cutting yourself off from people. It means choosing connection more intentionally. When I did reach out to someone, it was because I wanted to share something real, not because I was trying to escape loneliness. That made those connections feel warmer and more meaningful. As these changes settled in, something surprising happened. The silence that once felt heavy began to feel spacious. The quiet moments became places to rest instead of reminders of what was missing. And that sense of ease opened the door to even deeper ways of finding companionship within myself and gentle connection with the world around me. Watching and feel that these insights are meaningful. Please type number 2 in the comments to let me know you're still with me. And if you haven't subscribed yet, I warmly invite you to do so, and don't forget to turn on the bell, so you won't miss any of our upcoming videos designed to uplift, inform, and inspire. Your support truly means a lot. It's what keeps us going and allows us to continue sharing thoughtful, helpful content just for you. Now, let's continue this journey together. Once I began to embrace the quiet rather than fear it, I noticed another shift taking place. How I spent my attention and energy changed. I realized that for years, I had scattered myself in too many directions, trying to fill every empty moment with noise, people, or activities. And yet, even in a crowd or a busy schedule, I often felt a gnawing emptiness. It wasn't the company I needed, it was focus, presence, and intention. Slowly, I started redirecting my attention toward things that truly nourished me. One of the most powerful tools I discovered was creating small, meaningful routines. These were not chores or obligations, they were little ways to care for myself. For example, each morning I would step outside, feel the air on my skin, notice the rhythm of the neighborhood waking up. Sometimes I would water my plants, noticing the new growth or the way light hit a leaf. Other times I would make a simple breakfast, savoring each bite instead of rushing through it. These small acts became anchors, turning what could have been empty hours into moments of presence and appreciation. Alongside routines, I began to explore hobbies and passions I had neglected. There were paints in the corner of my closet, dusty notebooks full of unfinished writing, even an old guitar waiting for attention. For years, I had put these things aside, thinking they were impractical or that I didn't have the energy. But I discovered that returning to them, even slowly and imperfectly, gave a profound sense of companionship. When your hands are busy creating, and your mind is engaged, loneliness begins to dissolve because you are fully inhabiting your own company. I also had to learn the art of saying no. This was harder than it sounds. Over decades, many of us accumulate obligations, invitations, and shoulds. It's easy to keep saying yes out of habit or guilt. But I found that by declining things that drained me, I was freeing space to simply exist with myself, without pressure or distraction. Saying no isn't selfish, it's a form of respect for your own time and energy, and it allows you to be fully present for the things that genuinely matter. Another important piece was cultivating gratitude and curiosity. I started paying attention to small joys, sunlight through a window, a favorite song, a memory that made me smile. I asked myself questions like, what makes this day interesting? What do I want to notice right now? This tiny shift in focus helped me feel connected to life, even when I was physically alone. Curiosity and gratitude became companions in their own right, reminding me that solitude doesn't mean emptiness. I also began reaching out to others in ways that felt authentic. Not out of desperation, but out of a genuine desire to connect. Short calls to friends, letters to family, checking in with neighbors, small gestures that built meaningful links without overwhelming my life. When connection is chosen consciously, rather than sought as a cure for loneliness, it feels richer and more sustaining. And then there were moments of reflection and stillness. I practiced sitting quietly, listening to my thoughts without judgment. Some thoughts were joyful, some were painful, and some simply passed like clouds. Allowing myself to feel each one without reacting created a sense of freedom. I realized that my inner life could be a source of companionship, insight, and even delight. I wasn't running from myself anymore, I was walking alongside myself. Physical movement also played a surprising role in easing loneliness. A gentle walk, stretching, light gardening, these activities reminded me that my body and mind are connected. Moving through space, noticing sensations, breathing deeply, I felt more alive and more anchored in my own presence. Movement, like creativity or reflection, became a subtle but powerful form of dialogue with myself, reinforcing that being alone can be rich and fulfilling rather than empty. Through these practices, I gradually built a new relationship with my own company. Solitude became a space for nourishment, not fear. Silence became a friend instead of a warning sign. And over time, I began to notice something extraordinary. The more I embraced being alone, the less I felt lonely, even in moments when no one else was around. My own presence became sufficient, and my sense of peace grew in ways I had never expected. This part of the journey taught me that learning to be alone is not about isolating yourself. It's about understanding yourself, honoring your needs, and creating a life that is rich and meaningful even without constant company. And as this understanding deepened, I discovered even subtler aspects of solitude, ways to find connection within, how to turn quiet moments into opportunities for growth and joy, and how to prepare the heart for authentic relationships with others when they do appear. As I continued on this path, I discovered that being comfortably alone isn't a destination, it's an ongoing practice. Each day offered new opportunities to engage with myself, to notice my thoughts, and to nurture my well-being in small, deliberate ways. One of the most profound realizations was that solitude gave me a chance to cultivate compassion, both for myself and for the world around me. When I stopped rushing, stopped comparing, and simply paid attention, I found that my inner life became richer, gentler, and far more satisfying. I began to recognize that part of loneliness comes from resisting life as it is. Fighting against reality, whether it's a quiet house, a slower pace, or changes in relationships, can create tension that feels like emptiness. But when I learned to accept the present moment without judgment, I felt lighter. I could sit quietly with a cup of tea, watch the shadows move across the floor, and simply exist without needing to fill the space with noise or distraction. That acceptance doesn't mean resignation, it means understanding that life, even in its quietest moments, is still full. Another discovery was the importance of creativity and play, even in small doses. I started sketching again, writing little reflections in my journal, experimenting with simple crafts. These activities weren't about achieving perfection, they were about expressing myself, being curious, and enjoying the process. Creativity gave my solitude texture, turning empty hours into opportunities for growth and exploration. It reminded me that being alone can be deeply satisfying when you engage with your own mind and hands. I also deepened my connection with nature. Something as simple as sitting on the porch and listening to birds, feeling the wind on my face, or watching the clouds drift by became a form of companionship. Nature doesn't demand conversation or attention, yet it offers a quiet, sustaining presence. Those moments helped me feel part of a larger world, reminding me that even in solitude, I was connected to life in a meaningful way. Reflection and mindfulness became key companions as well. I spent time considering what brought me joy, what drained me, and what I wanted to cultivate more of in my life. Instead of letting thoughts spiral into worry or regret, I learned to observe them, acknowledge them, and then return to the present. This practice helped me feel grounded and peaceful, even when the house was empty or plans fell through. I also began to notice that solitude sharpened my relationships with others. Because I no longer depended on constant company to feel whole, the moments I shared with friends and family became richer and more genuine. I listened more attentively, appreciated more deeply, and engaged with curiosity rather than obligation. Being comfortable alone made my connections more intentional, not more desperate. Over time, I realized that the heart of learning to be alone without feeling lonely is a shift in perspective. It's about seeing solitude not as an absence but as a space, a place to reconnect with yourself, to rest, to reflect, and to create. It's about understanding that being alone can be full, nourishing, and even joyful, rather than something to fear or escape. If you're watching this and feeling some of the same challenges I once faced, know that it's possible to find peace in your own company. Start small. Notice your breathing, your surroundings, and the small pleasures in your day. Create tiny rituals that bring comfort and meaning. Explore hobbies or creative pursuits you've neglected. Practice acceptance and gratitude. Over time, you may discover, as I did, that your own presence can become your most loyal companion. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Have you experienced moments when being alone felt peaceful or enriching? Or are there struggles you've faced in learning to embrace solitude? Share your experiences in the comments. Your story might help someone else find comfort. If you found this video helpful, please like and subscribe so we can continue sharing insights on living fully and gracefully at any age. Remember, learning to be alone without feeling lonely isn't about isolation. It's about presence, attention, and care. It's about cultivating a rich inner life that supports you through the quiet and strengthens the moments you share with others. Here's to discovering peace, joy, and companionship in your own presence, at any age, and to living these years with curiosity, gentleness, and self-respect.